There is no gain without sacrifice. Acacian proverb, flavor text of Draconian Silex. In the years after the end of the Brothers' War, life elsewhere on Dominaria continued. The people of Sarpadia had no knowledge of the Brothers or their wars across Tertiaire. They knew nothing of the great war machines that ravaged the land, or the blast that destroyed Argoth. No, the empires of Sarpadia, even as the world entered the era known as the Dark, were content to continue life as normal, largely ignorant to the changing world. Acacia was by far the greatest of these empires, a nation that prospered under its king, Henry Joseph I. While Acacia had a mighty military, it was also an empire of trade and diplomacy, and a hub of medical knowledge. Most of all, it was an empire united by the Order of Lightbur, a religion that worshipped a magical avatar known as the Hand of Justice. But over time, the Order became divided, with extremists led by Oliver Ferrell eventually breaking off into the Ferrellite cult. While they still held true to the basic teachings of the Order of Lightbur, these Ferrellites were far more radical, straining the peace of Acacia with their violent ways. The Ferrellite cult was not the only source of concern for Acacia, however. The Order of the Ebon Hand, a religion that practiced sacrifices in service to their dark god, worked in the shadows to supplant order. The Ebon Hand could be found throughout Acacian territories, hidden but present, a constant danger to the people. In time, they began to produce abominations known as thralls, vile servitors who would provide a constant source of sacrifices for their dark rituals. While Acacia was the largest of the Sarpadian cultures, it was not the only one. The mountains of Sarpadia were home to the dwarves, peaceful miners and craftsmen who traded with all. The coastal waters near the continent were inhabited by the Vodalian Empire, merfolk that wielded both incredible magic and created items of wondrous beauty. While they were militaristic, the Vodalians were not expansionistic and traded peacefully with their dwarven and human neighbors while practicing the worship of their god, Svailun. The merfolk were not without troubles, however. As the seas cooled year after year, primitive crustaceans known as homerids would migrate from northern waters, seeking only to destroy Vodalia and take her territories. And then there were the elves of Havenwood. The Havenwood forest was vast, occupying much of the northern areas of Sarpadia, but despite their reach, the elves primarily kept to themselves. The elves alone seemed to recognize the threat of the growing cold and the long dark, and with the help of the sage Thelin, would create a race of creatures known as Thalids, a race that would, hopefully, serve as a source of food in the coming cold. And finally, it must be said that Sarpadia was home to the planeswalker known as Tev Loneglade, who, alongside his sister, Timolin, traveled about the continent. Tev, caring little for anything beyond his sister, blessed her with eternal youth so that the two could enjoy the wonders of the world together. Timolin, for her part, remained idealistic and hopeful, enjoying their travels and, over her long life, taking several lovers. Tev, however, would eventually grow bitter and scornful. Though he had immense power as a planeswalker, he lamented at his own inability to cause any significant change. His love for his sister was Tev's only true attachment to Dominaria, and her loss would be what paved the way for his descent into darkness. The first of the Sarpadian empires to fall was that of the dwarves. Their various mines and strongholds came under rather sudden and extreme assaults from a joint force of orcs and goblins. Though they fought bravely, the dwarven defenders had little hope of victory. A few survivors were evacuated from Sarpadia by their god, the Lady of the Mountain, but it's fair to say that many were slain by the orc-goblin hordes. Among those who perished was a dwarven hero named Kylan, the most recent in a long line of Timolin's dead lovers. Distraught at Kylan's death, Timolin no longer wished to outlive others, and had her brother remove her enchantments of eternal youth. Despite her grief, Timolin still saw the good in doing the right thing, and made to warn the Acacians of the threat now posed by the orcs and goblins. Unfortunately, she would be captured by agents of the Ebon Hand, and was used as bait to lure in and capture Oliver Farrell, with whom Timolin had shared a brief tryst. But the Ebon Hand had misjudged Farrell, who stabbed Timolin to death the moment he could. This one act of senseless murder would spell the doom of Sarpadia. Sensing the death of his sister, Tev became overwhelmed by fury and madness, taking on a new draconic form. With a single spell, he incinerated those responsible for the death of his sister, then opened a portal above Acacia, summoning a dread horde of orcs and goblins that soon overwhelmed and destroyed the nation. Tev would take on a new name, calling himself Tevesh Zot, the Doom of Fools, and set out to completely destroy Sarpadia. The elves, who had previously been keeping their thalids in line by slaughtering those who grew too ambitious or intelligent, suddenly found themselves on the receiving end of a thalid onslaught. It was not long before Havenwood fell. Vidalia found their Homerid enemies suddenly doubling in both number and intelligence, as well as their own defenses lacking. The Underwater Empire fell, with the elites fleeing through portals to unknown seas, while the Homerids took complete control over the coasts. As for the Ebon Hand, they found themselves similarly overwhelmed by their own creations, the Thralls. Having grown more intelligent and powerful over time, the Thralls had little difficulty in overthrowing and slaughtering their former masters, before going on a rampage that threatened to swallow all of Sarpadia. In the skies above a ruined continent, Tevesh Zot smiled, victorious, now knowing that civilization only brought corruption and ruin. Zot would spend the Ice Age repeating the fall of Sarpadia across Dominaria, ending countless cultures in similarly brutal fashions. Over the course of the next 50 years, the Thralls would come to completely dominate the continent of Sarpadia, evolving to become more powerful with each successive generation. During the Phyrexian invasion, these same Thralls proved to be a significant obstacle for the invaders, overwhelming and repelling them with surprising savagery. With how powerful the Thralls have become, perhaps it's good that they remain unaware of a larger world beyond their shores. If they did, perhaps the doom of Sarpadia would be repeated across the whole of Dominaria. Today, Sarpadia is a continent of ruins, filled with thralls and the skeletons of dead empires. It's fascinating to look back at what used to be Acacia, Valdalia, Havenwood, and know that all were laid low in mere weeks. Sarpadia is the setting of the Fallen Empire's set, and has not had any significant screen time since that set's initial release. References to Sarpadia and its empires still pop up from time to time, but with the continent overrun, it would make for a poor location to revisit. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, then why not crack open a pack of Fallen Empires and tear up the rare slot, and while you're at it, leave a like or a comment below. If you want to be alerted whenever I upload new videos, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button and decimate that notification bell. Finally, if you want to support me directly, then go check out my Patreon page. Patrons get access to all my lore videos early, and I truly appreciate their support. Thanks again, and have a great day.